the compass, not the construction, right? Some errors, right? And the things that we should be aware of as far as the questions for this portion is concerned. Okay, so there are two types of direct reading compass or magnetic compass that we deal with in this portion of the studies, which is the vertical card type and the grid ring type. Okay, the vertical card basically only means that the card, it is vertical and it is aligned with north, and it is in a way stationary, and the aircraft actually revolves around it in a turn. So when it's going round the vertical card. That is what a vertical card actually stands for. And there are two types, the B type and the E type. In most cases, the E type is the standby compass in most of our large aircraft. Okay, it's a standby directional indicator. The standby compass, which is normally the E2A, the E2B, and the B1, the B2, and types like that. Okay, the grid ring type is basically the P type. The P type or the grid ring type is one that is flat. Okay, and you read it, it is horizontal, and you read it from the top. It's below you. Right? Whereas the vertical card type, it is in line with you, and you rotate the aircraft around that card. And the tape, in the case of the grid ring, it is at the flat, horizontal. Right? The advantage is it is larger in size, and it has got damping wires. Damping wires form a very important part of the system because it makes it periodic. We'll see what periodic is. You obviously know what is periodic. It means aligning itself quickly after being disturbed from its original state. Okay, that is periodic. All right. What are the basic requirements of a compass? There are three basic requirements. One is horizontality, or the compass should be able to align itself with the horizontal component of the Earth's magnetic field. And having aligned itself, it should remain so throughout, continue to remain so. That is the property of horizontality of a compass. The second requirement of a compass is its sensitivity. Okay, sensitivity you can say is of two types in the sense. One is the your location in relation to the horizontal field of the Earth's magnetic field, the position of the observer or the person who's got the compass in which latitude, how close to the equator, how far away from the equator, or close to the pole. That way, that determines the sensitivity of the magnetic field, Earth's magnetic field. The second sensitivity is that of the compass itself. It stands to reason that if you have a longer compass, okay, it has more surface, and so it will be more sensitive. Now there is a limit to which you can have a compass sideways or lengthwise. So what you do is you have it in a number of pieces. Okay, east-west, but in a number of pieces. The larger number of pieces, the more sensitive it is possible to make that compass. But there are again limitations to that. The ideal that we found out is to get a circular magnet, more in the shape of a horseshoe, which forms the magnet in the direct reading compass, or the compass that is now under study. Okay, so that is the aspect of sensitivity. Then there is the question of periodicity. Periodic, it should be periodic. What does periodic means? That is, once disturbed, it should be able to come back to its state at the earliest. All right, there are very many ways of making this periodic. Just as there are ways on making the sensitivity a little more effective. All right. Okay. So let's go back to how to make sensitivity a little more effective. One is that the magnet is suspended. It's a suspended magnet where it aligns itself with the north, and a suspended magnet helps in more ways than one. The first way it helps is that when you suspend a magnet, okay, the effect of dip is reduced. The effect of dip is reduced in a suspended magnet, but the aspect of acceleration and turning errors are introduced. If there was no suspension of the magnet, then the dip would remain, but there would be no turning or acceleration errors. But now, because you're suspending the magnet, and there is the aspect of C of G of that suspended magnet, you will remember from the days when you studied instruments. Okay, so by suspending the magnet, we introduce acceleration and turning errors. But when we suspend the magnet, we put it on a pivot, let's say. When we put it on a pivot, if we make that pivot as smooth as possible, then the sensitivity increases because the friction reduces. Okay, and how is that done? We put an iridium tip on which the whole magnetic block is balanced. That is one. Okay, and then what we do is we lubricate that pivot. It is put on an iridium tip and the pivot is lubricated, making friction less and thereby effective sensitivity a little more. Is this understood? The business of sensitivity of a magnet. You all have done it before, I know, but as revision, I hope it is clear. All right. The other part is periodicity. What does periodicity mean? I said the ability of a magnet to be able to come back to its equilibrium once it's disturbed, either by way of turbulence or in a turn or whatever. Once you come out of the turn or once you're out of turbulence, then the magnet or the compass should be able to settle down. There are very many ways of doing this. In the case of a P-type, that is the grid ring type, like I told you, you look at it from the top, it has got wires, okay, damping wires, which then make sure that it acts like a baffle plate in a fuel system. Okay, it doesn't allow the fluid to move too much within that magnetic system. Back to fluids. Why do we need fluid? Okay, we need fluid to be able to introduce periodicity, so that we see that the compass settles down quickly. If it is just suspended without any fluid, then there is no mechanism by which it can settle down quickly. It stands to reason that when you have a fluid, okay, if the thicker the fluid, the faster it will settle down. But then there are disadvantages. If you have a thick fluid, then when it goes out of equilibrium, that is in turbulence or whatever, then it goes to another place and it takes a long time to come back because the fluid is so thick. So when we are talking about fluid, the viscosity has to be correct. It cannot be too much viscosity, and there shouldn't be too less viscosity. Okay, so one has to draw a balance of viscosity to be able to make this business of periodicity of make the compass periodic more effective. Okay, is this clear on making the compass periodic? To have a damping liquid, okay, or like in the case of a P system, you have a damping wire. Okay, there are some requirements, like I mentioned, about this damping liquid that you put into a compass. Wherever the damping liquid is there, it is both in the P type, the B type, and the A type. The vertical card and the grid ring both have fluids to help in this damping process and thereby increase the periodicity of the compass. All right. One is that the damping fluid should have a low coefficient of expansion. It should have a large temperature range so that no matter what the temperature that compass will be subjected to, it will not go too far out to be able to affect the viscosity so much as to upset the periodicity for which that liquid has been introduced into the system. Okay. So it should have a low coefficient of expansion. It should have sufficiently low viscosity. It should have a high boiling point, obviously, because in case temperatures rise for whatever reason, okay, we should make sure that the boiling point is not so low as to upset the fluid and affect the system. And the last part requirement of a fluid in the compass system, in this damping system, is it should be non-corrosive. While helping in this damping business of making it periodic, it shouldn't cause corrosion to the components it comes in contact with. Okay, is this clear on the important aspects of a compass? Now there are some serviceability checks that one carries out in a compass. Okay, the first thing is that the casing shouldn't be cracked. One of the ways of making out the casing, of course, in an extreme case, the fluid will all leak out. But if there's a crack in an area where the fluid is not resting, then it won't leak out, but you will find bubbles. So if there's a bubble inside a compass system, it is non-effective, it is unserviceable. That is one. It shouldn't be discolored. The fluid is supposed to be transparent, colorless, and so in case it is discolored or it has sediments, then that compass is to be discarded. There is a problem with the fluid or the compass itself. So the bubbles caused by any leak, discoloration of the fluid, okay, and the accuracy of a standby compass or the direct reading compass is plus minus 10 degrees. The accuracy of a direct reading compass is plus minus 10 degrees. Then there are certain checks that you carry out on the compass itself. One is that the first time you carry out a check is when you taxi out and align yourself with the runway. Okay? When you align yourself with the runway, you know the magnetic heading of the runway. You should see that your compass does not read more than plus minus 10 degrees. If it reads anything plus minus 10 degrees from the known direction of the runway magnetic heading, then you need to return to dispersal because your compass is unserviceable. In fact, there is one question, one of the AWACS questions says that you line up and it's more than plus minus 10 degrees. What is the action that you will take? All right. What are the other checks that you carry out? Then you have to check that the pivoting capability of the compass and the periodicity of the compass has to be checked. And how do you do that? Because you're on ground, you're stable. There is a small little magnet that you take and you run that thing over the compass face, deflect it by about 20 degrees and remove the compass, let it go. This compass should rotate like that and come and settle down plus minus 2.5 degrees. And the time that it takes, okay, within 30 seconds or less, it should come and settle down plus minus 2.5 degrees. Okay, so you take the small little magnet, you hold it on the compass face, you shift it by 20 degrees to the right, right? And then you leave it and see the thing comes and it settles down plus minus 2.5 degrees. You do it the same way on the left hand side, on one side and then the other. So you've changed, in this case, in this manner, you've checked out the periodicity, you've checked out what is the state of the pivot, the amount of friction, right? And that it is able to settle down in the time frame that it is supposed to, and within plus minus 2.5 degrees. Is this clear? Okay. Next, we come to errors of a compass. Less people. Hazik, can you hear me, Hazik?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Good morning. Izan?
Yes, sir. Morning, sir.
Yeah, morning, Izan. Ziovi?
Morning, sir.
Hi, hi. Hakimi? Morning, Hakimi.
Morning, sir.
Yeah, okay. All right. Hazik, tell me to do with acceleration error. If in the northern hemisphere you're facing in an easterly direction, right, and you accelerate, will your compass overread or underread? Will the tendency of the compass be to overread or underread? If you're aligned on 090 northern hemisphere and you accelerate on takeoff, what will your compass read? How much will it read, overread or underread? Hazik, do you remember or you don't?
Overread.
It'll overread?
I think.
You've forgotten.
Yes.
Lynn?
Correct.
Lynn?
It will underread, sir.
Underread. So the tendency of the compass is to swing to the right or the left.
To the right, sir.
The compass will swing to the right.
Yeah, clockwise.
The card will go clockwise, and so the reading will be less. Okay. There is a way of remembering this. This is in while facing 090. Let's take the opposite. Okay, Rajesh. Facing 270, if I accelerate, will the reading tend to overread or underread?
Overread.
Overread. Okay, that means the tendency of the compass is like in the previous case. In this case, it will swing to the left. The reading will go to the right, so that the indication will be overread. If to the right, it will overread. Easy way of remembering this. I'll tell you the easy way of doing it. Now suppose Hakimi, in the southern hemisphere, on a westerly heading, if I accelerate, what will be the tendency of the compass?
Underread.
It will?
Underread.
It will underread. That means the tendency of the compass card will go to the right or left?
The compass, right? To the left.
Compass
right.
card will go to the right. The reading will go to the, as if you're turning left. Okay? A way to remember this is always remember, no matter which hemisphere you are in, when you accelerate, the tendency of the aircraft is to swing towards the nearest pole. Whichever direction you're facing, during acceleration, the tendency of the aircraft is to swing towards the nearest pole. Let's take facing 090 in the southern hemisphere, you accelerate. From what I told you, the tendency of the aircraft is to swing towards the nearest pole. You're in the southern hemisphere, so the tendency of the aircraft to swing towards the south pole, which is to the right. Right? If your nose swing to the right, the reading will increase, the compass card will be moving in the opposite direction. That means there's a tendency of the compass card to move to the left, the nose swing to the right, means overread. It is going towards the closest pole. Let's take west facing in the northern hemisphere. You accelerate, the nose will swing towards the nearest pole, which is to the right. Here, the northern hemisphere, north pole, it will swing towards the north pole, that is from 270 to the right. So it will overread. But the card will turn to the opposite side. The card is turning to the opposite side. Your nose or the reading will increase. Is this clear? Any doubts, anyone? Abdul?
Yes, sir.
Clear? Will you be
Yeah.
able to apply this rule every time?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Yeah? Okay, Ashraf. I am on the equator and I am facing 090. I told you North Pole, South Pole. Now I'm facing 090 on the equator. What will be the tendency of and I'm accelerating? The compass overread or underread?
Neither.
Say again?
Your direction 090, is it, sir?
Yes, 090, I'm on the equator.
No read, no underread, no
No
overread.
effect. Absolutely right. There is no effect when you're on the equator. Remember, if you cast your mind back to when you studied instruments, what is causing this? Like I told you, what is causing it is because now it is the C of G is shifting depending on the direction in which you are turning. Right? So when you are on the equator, there is no tilt of the north and the north facing magnet or the blue facing magnet. There is no tilt, and so there will not be any acceleration error. The same when you're on the aligned north-south. When you're aligned north-south, you accelerate or decelerate, there will be no acceleration error. Is this clear, everyone? When you're on the equator, when you're facing north-south, no error, acceleration or deceleration. Now we've only been through the acceleration error. Deceleration is the exact opposite. If you're facing 090 in the southern hemisphere, okay, and you decelerate, the nose will go away from the closest pole. In the southern hemisphere, the nose will go away to the left. If you're going away to the left, that means it will decrease in heading, it will underread. The compass card will turn to the right. Sometimes the questions that come to you, they'll ask you what happens to the compass card or what happens to your reading. Is it overreading or underreading? Remember that when your nose swings towards the closest pole, in the case of deceleration, it swings away from the closest pole. 090, southern hemisphere, you decelerate, the nose shifts away from the south pole to the left. That is, it will underread. But your card is turning the other way, it is turning to the right. Your nose is turning to the left. Any doubts on this? Is this clear? Acceleration, deceleration. Okay, Ziawi. Now, pointing 090, northern hemisphere, and I decelerate. Where will my heading will underread or overread? Ziawi. Can you hear me?
Overread.
Underread. Absolutely. Where it will underread? Ziavi, decelerating, facing 090 northern hemisphere. Will it underread or overread? Where will the nose swing?
Overread.
It will overread. Absolutely right. It will swing away from the North Pole to the right. When it goes right, it overreads. Yes. Okay. Clear, everyone? Suren, is it clear? I don't know if Suren can hear me. Okay. All right. So if acceleration, deceleration is clear, let's go to turning error. All right. Turning error is also introduced because of the same reason. Okay. So in the case of the turning error, there are two ways in which you will have the question will be asked. Will the compass lag or will it go ahead? Okay. First, let's see how does it affect our turn. Let's say northern hemisphere turning from 030 to 330. I'm facing 030 and I'm turning left. 030 turning left, I want to come out on 330. Okay. So when I'm turning left, okay, the compass lags, right? So you have to start coming out early. Suppose it's a rate 1 turn, right? All right. Abdul, what is the rate 1 turn?
3 degree 1 second.
3 degrees, 1
Then-
second.
No, I forgot. 1 degree 3 second. I forgot already.
Why don't you make it simpler? 360 degrees in 2 minutes.
2 minutes. So 1 minute, 180,
Okay.
60. So
Okay. So 360 degrees in 2 minutes is a rate 1 turn. Right? When you are doing a rate 1 turn, suppose you are turning left, okay, from 030 to 330 in the northern hemisphere, in a northerly heading, you come out start coming out 20 degrees early. Right? So if you are turning from 030 to 330, what heading will you start coming out on, Nina? I'm coming out on 330. I said 20 degrees early, so I start coming out on 350. Yes. So 20 degrees early, I start coming out, and by the time I come to 330, the compass will catch up. It lags. Okay. In the northern hemisphere, on northerly headings, the compass lags. So you have to start coming out early. Exactly the opposite for southerly headings. If I am on 200 or say 240, turning left, I want to come out on 160. 220, turning left, coming out on 160. Yeah, Lynn. Do you remember on what heading I need to come out on?
No, sir, I don't remember.
Don't remember. Okay. Anyone who remembers? Ayman, do you remember? Faizan, any of you do you remember? Okay. I'll go over it. It is the opposite. In this case, the compass is going ahead of the turn. In the southern hemisphere, okay, and in a turn for turning error, the compass is going ahead. So suppose you want to come out on 160 turning left, you go 20 degrees ahead and come out of the turn, the compass will swing back. In the case of northerly headings, what do? You, on southerly headings, northern hemisphere, southerly heading, you have to go ahead and then come out. So if you want to come out on 160 turning left, you go to 140 and come out of the turn, the compass will swing back to 160. From, suppose the opposite, the other way around in the northern hemisphere, turning right on southerly heading, from 160, I am turning right onto 200. Okay, so on turning right, I go 20 degrees ahead of 200. How much is that? 220. So I go to 220 and I come out and it will swing back to 200. Is this clear? In the northern hemisphere, on northerly headings, I come out early because the compass lags. In the case of the southerly headings, northern hemisphere, the compass goes ahead. So you have to come out late. You go ahead and you come back and the compass swings back. This is clear. Yes? Any
Yes,
doubts?
sir. Clear.
The opposite is for the southern hemisphere. Northerly heading, southern hemisphere, you do the opposite. If you want to come out on a particular heading, you go ahead 20 degrees and come out of the turn, the compass will swing back. In the southern hemisphere, northerly heading, go ahead of the heading and the compass will swing back. Right? And on southerly heading, you anticipate and you come out 20 degrees ahead. And the compass will catch up with you. Is that clear? Any doubts? Okay. So turning error, acceleration error, both hemispheres, you all have no doubt, hopefully. Okay. All right. There's one more aspect that we need to study about, and that is the various components of the magnetic field. That is the hard and the soft iron magnet. All right. Well, Ikhwan, do you remember what is hard iron magnet? Or hard iron magnetism?
I don't remember, sir.
Don't remember. Who remembers? Izam, do you remember? Hard iron magnetism?
I'm not really remember to say.
Not remember. Okay. Hard iron magnetism comes about during production. Okay, the hammering and the vibration and everything that goes into while producing an aircraft, hard iron magnetism is introduced into the system, into the magnetic field of the aircraft. Okay, so it happens, hard iron magnetism is introduced into the aircraft during the production stage. It depends on which latitude the aircraft was produced, what heading was the aircraft pointing when the compass was being worked on, and what is the extent of magnitude of banging, vibration, etc. that went into this aircraft during production. Okay, remember the three things that introduce hard iron magnetism into the aircraft. One is the area in which it was made, the heading in which the aircraft was pointing when work went on and the compass was fitted or introduced, and what was the extent of vibration and everything else that went into the aircraft during production. This is hard iron magnetism or hard iron magnetic field. Okay. Now this magnetism has three components: the longitudinal component, the horizontal component, and the vertical component. All right. The horizontal component is component P. Lateral is Q, and the vertical is R. The vertical component R has no effect on the aircraft or the aircraft magnet or the aircraft compass, but P and Q does have an effect. Okay, so all this is adjusted when we come to when we are carrying out the compass swing and making adjustments to the compass. So one is the hard iron magnetism, and then what we call the soft iron magnetism. All right. Anyone can remember what is soft iron magnetism? Yeah. Isam, soft iron magnetism.
So it is a part of the aircraft.
It is part of the aircraft, yes. And how does it enter the aircraft? How is it generated in the aircraft?
The magnetism generated by the aircraft structure affect the compass of the aircraft.
Yeah. Okay. It is dependent on the amount of soft iron that is there, which has been exposed to the magnetic field. Soft iron. Copper, brass, they are not soft iron. Okay. Whereas ferrous metal, iron, these are all soft iron. The soft iron and the amount of the electricity and the electrical wiring and the electrical field in the aircraft, all this introduces soft iron magnetism into the magnetic field of the aircraft. Okay, and this has three components: B, C, and D. Okay, B is the coefficient B, coefficient C, and coefficient D. Coefficient B, now these coefficients that I'm talking about are the coefficients that are obtained during a compass swing to find out what is the extent of soft iron magnetism that is affecting the aircraft, and what are the corrections that need to be introduced. Okay, so to overcome this, first is the soft iron magnetism is introduced, like I told you, because of the amount of this soft iron that is there and the magnetic field that is generated by the electrical wiring, the electrical circuits, etc. And this is all set, the hard iron magnetism and the soft iron magnetism is set right by going through the magnetic field by a compass swing. Okay, what is a compass swing? Anyone wants to say something? Ashraf? You want to say something?
Oh, no, sir. Sorry. Didn't realize I unmuted myself.
No, okay. What was I saying? Yeah. The compass swing, how is a compass swing carried out? The aircraft, there's a periodicity. There are certain occasions on which a compass swing is done. One is, it is very clear when before the aircraft is put into a service, etc. After all the production, etc. is over and the compass is fitted, you need to compass swing the aircraft to find out what is the residual degree of deviation that is there, which needs to be reflected in a compass card, which the pilot will follow when he is steering. Okay, and how is the compass swing carried out? It's taken to an area which is free of other magnetic field, no electric wiring, no nothing. All right, the aircraft, the engines are started, all the systems are on, and you compare the aircraft compass and a master compass with a person who's standing outside the aircraft and you compare the readings. If the east of that master landing compass, what is the difference between the master compass and the compass which is there in the aircraft? And these readings are recorded on various headings, east, west, north, south, and the quadrantal headings, every 45 degrees, etc. So these headings are noted down, and then you do some calculations, you make some adjustments, and there are some residual errors that are there which comes out in the form of a deviation card, and it is fitted in the air. Okay, is this clear? All right. Now, coefficient B is the readings taken on east minus readings taken on the westerly heading divided by 2. That is coefficient B. In the case of coefficient C, it is reading taken on the north minus readings taken on the south divided by 2. And you make some adjustments to correct coefficient C. So remember, coefficient B is to do with east and west. Coefficient C is to do with north and south. Okay. Coefficient D is the vertical component which is not compensated. It doesn't come into the picture. We mentioned B, C, and D. Now you'll ask, what is coefficient A? Coefficient A is the difference in the lubber line. Okay, when you do the initial headings, you might notice that the lubber line which aligns the aircraft compass to the north is not aligned. So you unscrew the whole compass mounting, okay, the sensor, and you adjust the whole thing to get the lubber line in line with the north. That is coefficient A. So coefficient A is the lubber line. Coefficient B is to do with readings on east and west. And coefficient C is to do with readings on north and south. And coefficient D is the vertical component which is not compensated. Are the coefficients of soft iron magnetism understood? What is soft iron magnetism? How does it enter the aircraft? How does it get generated? And what do we do to overcome this and reduce it to the form of a compass card which is there in the aircraft as a deviation card for the pilot to follow? Any doubts, anyone? Yeah. Okay. That finishes my revision of the direct reading compass. Okay, the errors and a few aspects about compass swing which you should know. All right, there's one more aspect which I forgot. What are the occasions after which a compass swing is required? When you need to carry out a compass swing? The first is after manufacture, obviously, the first time that you do it. Yes? Okay. Second is there's a periodicity after which every so many months or every so many weeks that you need to, or after flying so many hours, you carry out a compass swing. Okay? So one is periodic, one is in the initial stages, one is periodic. Then should you change any major component in the aircraft, you need to carry out a compass swing. For example, after an engine change. After some major magnetic component or electrical component in the aircraft, you need to carry out a compass swing. The schedule is given in the aircraft manual. Which are the important components of the change of which you need to carry out a compass swing? If you fly through a storm or in the proximity of a storm, then you need to carry out a compass swing. Should you have been struck by lightning or whatever, you need to carry out a compass swing. Also, should you have any doubt, the operator have any doubt about the accuracy of the compass, you carry out a compass swing. And how will you have any doubt about the accuracy of the aircraft? During any of your cross countries or coast steering or whatever, you find a very vast difference between the, after all, I told you that in most cases, the compass is the standby direction equipment. Now, should you find a very large variation between your master and the standby, then you carry out a compass swing. Or even if this is your master instrument, you find reason to believe that your navigation has been going wrong for some reason because of some doubt with the compass. A compass swing is called. Okay, so the occasions for compass swing, let me see that again. Yes. After storage, you take out an aircraft, carry out a compass swing, change of a compass or change of major components, lightning strike, large change of location. Suppose your aircraft is located somewhere in the southern latitudes and you ferry it to the north because change of location. Large latitude change, carry out a compass swing. Any modifications that are carried out, you have fitted an extra instrument to carry out a compass swing. Accuracy in doubt, carrying unusual ferromagnetic material. Suppose you have a cargo aircraft and you've carried some large amount of ferromagnetic material, you've transported it, you carry out a compass swing. After maintenance and regular schedules, like I mentioned, and if subjected to sufficient or significant shock, maybe by lightning strike or whatever. Clear? Any doubts on any aspect? Okay. Now, this brings us to the end of our syllabus. But I'm aware that your practical aspect of plotting is still not done. Right? What we'll do now is when we meet next time, one is now I hope you all have side by side been doing the AWACS. If you all haven't been doing the AWACS, we will be doing it now during class. Okay? But I suggest you do it even otherwise, even when we don't get together. Even in your free time, we are getting together every alternate day. And I hope like hell by next week or so, we get into the class so that we can finish, do the revision in a proper manner so that you all are all confident and happy. For some reason, if we don't go into class even next week, we will do revision by way of doing questions on the AWACS. What I'd like is, you all have gone through the AWACS, time and again, and you have a large number of doubts. Please note down the number of the problem and if possible, send it to me before the class. So I am prepared to discuss it with you. During the class, I'll give you a set of problems that you need to do. You'll do it in the class. So that should you have any doubt, we can consult each other during the class. That is what we're going to do in the next few classes. Unless any of y'all or a number of you want me to cover any particular aspect of all that we've gone over, be it time or convergency or Lambert or any of the charts or whatever. Should you want me to repeat something, I will do that. Or any particular aspect of anything that you all have doubts about, you all consult amongst yourself and let me know. Tell me in advance so that I prepare. I'll do it for you. Or we will do revision by way of AWACS. Okay, clear? Yes, Shakil is not in two-way communication. Yeah, Abdul, Ashraf, you're
Yes,
the
sir,
guys
very
who I
clear.
keep in touch with. Yeah, okay. 1 minute, let me go back. I want to.
Sir.
Yeah.
I want to ask one thing.
Yeah.
So inside the AWACS, right? In the first section, The basic navigation, we have solar system. Right?
Yeah.
So solar system actually in which part of chapter?
You see, solar system mostly now combined. That is why in the initial stages, you all had some doubts. Okay, when we were doing the initial part of the syllabus, in the solar system, there are a lot of aspects of time that had not been taught. Now, solar system, you are prepared fully because you have studied time and the initial part of the solar system we went over. So you now should be prepared full whole scale. You should have no problem.
So it's a combination chapter.
Between time and the initial part of the solar system.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sir.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Now, any other doubts as to do with the syllabus or what we're going to do? Any doubts? So you'll have freedom. You let me know. You can communicate with me, send me messages, send me mail or whatever. And I look forward more than class. I look forward to interacting with you by your questions. I haven't been able to do this. What is the problem with this? Why am I getting this answer? What if you do that? It'll be good. Yeah. Okay, Suren. Yes, Suren.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Bye then for today.
Thank you.
Till we get together again.
Sure.
Lynn. Bye, Lynn.
Bye, sir.
Yeah. Alicia. Bye bye. Any doubts? Please message or mail me, Alicia. Okay. Yeah. Bye. Gilbert. Bye, Gilbert. See you. Bye, Rajesh.
Bye, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye, Nina. See you.
Bye, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Bye, Shakil. Where is Shakil? Yeah. Okay. Bye, Ashraf. Bye, Julian.
Bye, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Bye, Julian.
Bye, sir.
Bye, there. Hakimi, bye.
Bye, sir.
Where is Hakimi? Yeah, okay. Yeah, Hazik. Bye, Hazik.
Bye, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Ziawi. Bye, Ziawi.
Bye, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Bye, Izam. Ikwan.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Bye, sir.
Ikwan,
Thank you,
bye,
sir.
Ikwan. Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye, sir.
Bye, Ikwan.
Selamat Hari Raya.
Yeah. Then, Ayman. Okay, Ayman, bye. Ayman. Who else is there and I haven't called your name out? Lynn is there, yes. Okay, Abdul. Afzai?
Okay,
Yeah,
sir.
Afzai. Yeah, okay, Afzai. Bye. So all of you except Lingwin. Gulin, sorry. Okay. Bye, guys. I'll see you all next time then. And I hope to be able to be in communication with you. See you. Bye.
Sure, sir. Bye-bye.
Okay, Abdul. Bye.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.